Stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Christian. And yeah, when he asked me to do a talk, I wasn't sure what I'm going to talk about. So I was thinking, what's special, what's new? And I was thinking, hey, well, it's 10 years now since I started working on the first game I did. And today actually marks the 5th year that's completed at Daedalic Entertainment. So in a way, that's another anniversary. Woo! And, yeah, there's some Daedalic people here. So they are a little biased. If you need it a little louder, just tell me. Then I'll tell you that I can't do it, but I'll try. Okay. Yeah, they're giving me the thumbs up. Everything is all right. Okay. Yeah, let's start at the beginning, and I'll try to be done 9:05. Okay, this is going to be complicated. Okay, so this is my anniversary picture. Actually, it's a birthday picture a friend did for me, and it was in the same folder as my presentation, so I thought, okay, it's going in here. And so the first 5 years were at Lassie Games, which is simply me and my friend from the United States. And yeah, we did 2 games together. Then I finished studying in Leipzig my Japanese studies degree, which is something I did in real life, not in the digital world as Lassie Games was mostly. And then I pitched a game to Daedalic, and that's where I've been staying since then. By now I even have an apartment in Hamburg, so I don't have to stay all the time. So the first game, to just give you a quick overview, was this classic here. And since a lot of people have already seen this, no, they haven't. But it didn't have any marketing, but people liked it who played it, so yeah, I stuck around. It all started with me always having written stuff and making drawings and so on. And back in the days, I was a big fan of LucasArts Adventures. And so my friend came to me, he visited me from the US, and he said, oh, I'm doing an adventure game engine, by the way. He's a programmer. And so he's got a house and he's got a car, which is good. And but the first thing he had was an engine, and he almost had an engine. He told me in 2 months' time this will be done, and I told him, if you ever finish your engine, I'm going to make a game. 2 months later it was finished. So since I promised it to him, I started making a game. And this is what it turned out to be. It's What Makes You Tick, an adventure game short story, and took 1.5 years next to a university. And here are some numbers which I'm going to compare with the other projects later on. It's freeware, you can play it at lassiegames.com. By now actually we have voice acting because my friend always wanted to do that, and he had a theater group from Washington DC who were interested, so they did all the voices, and which is cool, and I didn't have to do a thing. But well, back in the days, after 1.5 years, you had a game made of 7 screens. Screens are these backgrounds that you draw where your character walks around in. And you had, well, all the characters are here except for the crab. There's a little hermit crab in the game, which is a character. And a crow, which is also a character. But those are the characters. So very limited scope, but it was a lot of work to make it work. And for me, the most important part was connecting drawings to walk around them, because that was something that mesmerized me when I was playing in the Curse of Monkey Island back then, because it was such a great quality of world building there, and I didn't really find that in other games at the time. So I tried to do something, and I still like it a lot. It's when I play it now, I see it in a more positive light than, you know, when you're just in there, you just think this is a Frankenstein, this is never going to work. But that's the horror of games, making games. It's like, you know what's happening in a sausage factory, so you can't eat sausages anymore. Usually when I play games now, it's always falling apart. I always start making lists in my head, asset lists, and I try to break it and stuff. Anyway, let's try to make it in time, the next project, I did some university stuff, and then my friend came by and said, there was a cliffhanger at the end of your game. And I said, yeah, it's, are you sure you want me to do this again? This is horrible. That was painful. And he said, okay, but how about we do it together? And so we had a team of 3 to 4 people. So my friend worked this time also as a scripter. I had to do the scripting, animation, drawing, text writing, sound editing, all by myself the last time. Now we were 3 to 4 people with 31 screens, 40 characters, and the playtime. Last time it was 1 to 2 hours. This time it's 10 to 12 hours. And again, it took 1.5 years, except this time it was full time. And at least for 2 of us. And it's commercial indie without advertising, so the adventure game websites liked it a lot, but yeah, after a couple of years a break even could be possible. But nowadays it's also available freeware, and since my friend is just as crazy as I am, he also did the full voices for these with a theater group 1 year later, so only like half a year ago, yeah, 1 year ago, I don't know, I don't remember. But he said he would never do it, and then he called me and said, I'm done. All I need is your voice, because I had a guest appearance as a side character. So this is what it looks like inside. I still drew the backgrounds, which is for me the most important, fun part, and then I did the writing. The first and the second were both classic puzzle games. So the story was important for me, but the puzzles had to be there, because at that point I was simply emulating what I knew from the LucasArts days. So back in those days I didn't really know games that got rid of the classic concepts of genre elements like puzzles for adventure games, or the good old gun for a shooter. Yeah, this is not a shooter. So, and then I did my thesis at university, and then I thought what I'm going to do next. So I thought, okay, I never wanted to do a game again, but then you start thinking and you develop an idea, and I thought, this time it's not supposed to be that hard. Somebody has to help me if I do this again. So I Googled, and I saw, oh, Daedalic Entertainment in Germany, in Hamburg, where I was born. What the hell? And so I played their games, and I thought, this is decent. And but of course they could use me. And so I went there with my laptop, and they were really, really cool guys. And I showed them a pitch for the game called, back in the days it was The Rabbit's Apprentice, and now it's become The Night of the Rabbit. Anyway, I started there a couple of months later as the creative lead, and the elements you do, of course, are very different when you work for, this time, a company, of course, with a team of, let's check, I wrote it down, about 20 people. Yeah, and because you constantly have to talk to them, and you also have to go to the studio to record the voices, and so on and so on. It's a clusterfuck of everything. It's unbelievable. And I'm still happy about how it turned out, but I stuck to the basics, what I knew. I emulated some of the stuff I had learned the last times I made games. And so this is the puzzle-driven game. I reduced some gameplay basics, like this has a one-click interaction. Back in those other 2 game times, I had a classic verb disk, like in Curse of Monkey Island. And this was a one-click interaction system, which was supposed to make it more fluent. But yeah, spoilers ahead. This also led to quick repetition of texts, which were limited by the company. And since my vision was not that limited, there was a lot of repetition, because you couldn't record everything in 5 variants, which could have improved quality, but well, you live and you learn. Anyway, yeah, some of those backgrounds were not by me. This is by the gifted Simone Kesterton, and some of them were by me. That's a good old Mousewood City Center. So I'm still in love with those, because It's around the corner. You can find out. It's not available for free, but if you get a good bundle, it's almost as good. So the next project, after a couple of small side jobs and secret activities and pitches, in the end it became this project. And let's look at the time. Holy smoke. Okay, to make the story short, okay, Daedalic Entertainment married Bastei Lübbe, which is a book publisher. Their biggest horse in the stable is Ken Follett, who's the most best-selling author worldwide, aside from Jesus. Oh, that was a good one. And so anyway, they want to make a lot of money because they think, of course, you do games, we bought you, we have this must be brilliant. The same thing they thought about Wallace and Gromit and the Bone games for Telltale, and as they tell us in in speeches like this, they usually say that calculation doesn't always work. So it's an experiment. I never read it. It doesn't have dragons. 12th century Europe, so 1,000 pages. The selling point, of course, is the story, and because I think we're going to make a great game. Some of my team are here. They will say it's brilliant. Anyway, the biggest reason to do this is because the challenge is huge. Because we didn't just want to make a game where someone plays in that universe and has his own limited story. We wanted to make the 1,000-page story in about 100 screens with about 100 characters, with a team of average 30. It was 10 in the beginning, but then 40. Trust me on that. And now it's 2.5 years of production time with all these people, and it's still just 12 to 14 hours. What the fuck? This is, and of course, this is a prize for interactive narration. Just to make it quick, this is one of the screens we have now. We have some gifted artists. Most of them are sitting here, so give them a hand. I really like it. So we spent a lot of money on books to do it right. Architecture is important. This is Kingsbridge. We will see it over the course of 30 years. The church stuff will happen, no spoilers. Anyway, so let's compare this. You already know it. So first game, 8,000 words, 60,000 words, 60,000 words, 120,000 words, which is why we have 3 authors. Valentina joined us later, so I say 2.5 just because of that reason. And yeah, so as you probably know and would already have guessed, this is a linear story. That's what it looks like. This is I nicked this from my workshop, so this is why this is German. So this is a beginning and an end. Even in a game you can do this. You can squeeze puzzles in the middle, and it's still a linear game. Now, if someone says, "Oh, let's make a non-linear story," then usually the first thing they do is this, which is, of course, insane, because this is not only make 60,000 words into 120,000 words. It's making it 5 times as big, and the player experience usually is the same, except if they share it on YouTube and there's a replay value. Yeah, of course. The only thing you do is you kill yourself. Anyway, so a nonlinear story, nice and simple, which is one of the most important lessons, could be something like this. You make a decision, then you have a consequence which kills you and you will be reset. You make another consequence and it's completely different content. This is twice as much work. Then you go back to the main storyline and you have 2 endings, but they're variants, so it's just 50%. Not 50% more work, maybe 20%. You only change 1 character who's alive. Anyway, if you want to hear about these things, join us for a workshop in December. Yeah. So, what are the lessons? So, what's there to be happy about? Actually, not that much. It's you become kind of a split personality when you make games like these, because it's not only storytelling. It's the production itself and storytelling. So if I had to do very quick dramatic and very cheesy lessons for you, it would be production-wise, trust no one, not even yourself. So, and this is why I stop this, and you have to figure it out yourself. No, it's, and for storytelling, it would be follow your heart. No, really. So, and the problem is, of course, this makes you really, really nervous because you become a little, confused at times. So if we would translate this into a good, understandable lessons, I would say during production, the most important thing is to defend quality, the product. Well, in game design, I would say emotions are quality, the product. Of course, you could do 1,000 variants on this. This is my version, so it might change next week. But I think there's something to learn from this. What does this mean in detail? So, this usually means be very empirical about stuff. So, like if I say, I can do this talk in 20 minutes, this is of course bullshit. I didn't have time to time this, so I shouldn't trust myself on that. Recalculate often means your calculation from last week are probably wrong now, so do that again. Have your project manager do it again. Because in the end, if you have 40 people in your team and you take 3 months longer, just calculate how much that costs. And of course, if it becomes a bumpy road, your quality will suffer. And since you want to defend quality, do that. Buffers, use a lot of buffers. Now I would even say 50% of what you have in time and money, take it away, put it in a safe, forget the combination, you will need it later on. So put a buffer on everything, that's very, very important. Learn about all aspects of production. So if I talk to Torben here and he knows about programming, I don't have a fucking clue. But if I listen to him, maybe I get an idea what he's talking about and then we can find a solution. And if you do a game like I did my indie games, and sometimes I can go to my backgrounders and say, well, I think there's a solution to that problem. And so you can always say, like, I did something similar once. So with animation, I could say that, like in dividing maybe the animation in different parts or something, my quality of animation, I did one walk cycle in my life, it's in the game, so it tells you about that. Learn what and whose calculations to trust. That's very important, because there are some people who give you numbers, which, if they turn out bullshit too often, you should never believe them again. Which is something you should work with very, very, directly and openly, because it's about the quality. And don't believe big words. If someone with a tie, a suit, and who smells nice comes along and tells you, it's not a problem, add 30 rooms to the game. And then you would say, oh, that's good, you wear a tie and you smell really nice. And I want those 30 rooms, let's do it. Your quality will go into the cellar because he doesn't have a fucking idea what he's talking about. So, and if he has, find out about that, and then trust. So let's go to the storytelling side. You could do books, talks, and whole lifestyles after this. So for my sake of argument, this is really important. Just for me, storytelling is simply the art of crafting emotions. So this simply means that storytelling is a lot more than just writing those words. Writing words is writing. So a game doesn't have to have text to have a story. And I would even expand the story to game design. If you have a story and you have like alibi game design, I want to make a game and I want to tell a story, let's make it a flipper or something like that. Or let's do it in an adventure game, but I hate puzzles, so it's not that important. Do collect games, mini games, mix colors, lock picking, whatever. Just let's get rid of this. And the other way around, like I'm really good at game design. Those storytellers with their stories. What I really want to do is game design. So we'll do the story afterwards. It's like polishing. In a way that can work, but not if you say like the emotions are already the story, because game design is all about emotions. Feel the flow, learn something, do something, find the pattern, get involved, get into the flow. So if we go to the story in the classic sense, I would call it plot right now. So the question is it basic or is it main attraction? Is your game, for example, like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie? Well, it's not really important what he's doing and why. It's more like how he's doing it. And then it helps to add some humor. The same goes maybe perhaps for porn movies. If you want to insert a story in there, add a dash of humor, and maybe it will, be less painful. So the same thing works, for example, for Command and Conquer, which back in the days had a really bad story. Well, not bad, but Jean-Claude Van Damme bad, and which was okay. If you want to do a low-level plot, do it, but do it consciously. So for me, that's going to be a little later. Of course, it's more complex. Anyway, know your genre, then break it and remix it, which simply means play a lot of games, maybe make adventure games, for example, or other games, and then, because art does that, know it and break it, do something else. Do a shooter without a gun. Do an adventure game without classic puzzles. Or do a pinball machine without a ball. I don't know. Try it, maybe. See what emotions will come from that. Hone your craft, game design, plot, text, visual art, because it's the only way of really getting better. So, and that's the fun part, actually. So, and my most important lesson, which I always talk about, like it's a religion, the player's mind is a game or story engine. So, don't give them everything, give them room to think. And if you walk around in a world and you make them wonder about the other stuff that you don't tell them about, it's a good thing, except if they don't get the plot. So that's what I mean by defend quality, and emotions are quality. So anyway, we have time, maybe 4 minutes more for a final rant about the Holy Grail, magic, and emotions. I don't really know what I was doing yesterday evening when I wrote that. No, I have it here, but I tried to make it from scratch. Anyway, the Holy Grail for me is the type of game where the game is actually the story. So that means you have to, as we saw with those flowcharts, really keep it simple to be able to create that level of quality. So a game like Journey, for example, if it were more complicated than what it is, if it had been 12 hours instead of 4, it would have not only taken 1 year longer than it already did, but maybe 3. And maybe it would never have been finished. So that's one big thing. And if your game is the story, that also means that all elements have to work together. The whole thing has to feel like a very polished, solid experience. And you can only do that by including those buffers. And so the magic word would be something, I always steal that from Alan Moore, who is a famous comic author, and he declared himself a magician 10 years ago, I think. And he's right, he's a magician. By his definition, magic is the art of changing reality by manipulating symbols. So simply he writes and shows stuff, and people feel, and then they change the way how they feel. So the same thing, of course, is what games do. So games have always been art. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It's just different levels of art. For me, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie is art. By the way, see Jean-Claude Van Johnson on Amazon. Anyway, so magic, games are art. And since games are art and emotions are art and art is cool, usually what we get to hear is games are cool. And the whole games industry is cool, which concludes the rant with a little bit of vinegar on our sugary pile of information, which simply is the industry. Art is cool, art is wonderful. An industry that uses art, of course, could be a problem. The advertising industry thinks they're cool, so people invest their lives in a lot of cocaine and a Coke advertisement spot. So not for cocaine, but for Coca-Cola. And hurrah! Yeah? Those guys are usually burnt out by the end, or they die because of the cocaine consume. But it's not that cool, not really cool. I'm pushing my definition of cool here on you, so, well, who cares? So, if the games industry is cool, let's just say it's just as cool as the companies are and their way of treating people and the players. So, that means two things. That we have to be critical about it, and well, we know there's a lot of hogwash going on and a lot of things, like in all industries, so just be careful when they take something cool or say the word game because it's cool. It's not necessarily cool just because of that. So because you can do art at home and you could even do a job that pays better. If you have an industry job, for example, that pays your rent, great. That's one thing. If you have a job that's fun for you, great. If you have both, it's almost impossible, but great. Even greater. So I'm still sticking around, which is good. But there's also one other thing, and that's games, I think, are also political in a way, because art is always political. So it's very cool to ask questions in games, and games now can do that, like Papers, Please, or many other storytelling games that you can find out about if you look or Google for storytelling games. Great, last 5 years. So play all those. I don't have to tell you about those. They will speak for themselves. But in a way, be political and keep the art alive. And that's the final, because ask questions, what kind of, do you want to make a game that's, for example, Konami is being criticized for investing most of its energy and licenses now into pachinko machines. Which is Japanese gambling machines. And a gambling machine in a way is art because it's blinking and it keeps you, you're always pushing those buttons and something might happen. If there's concepts like that in games, maybe is it that cool as it pretends to be? Just saying. And always keep in mind games are powerful because they're magic and art and emotions and stuff. See this? And so maybe a game can teach a child about science in a really cool way, which is usually not. And try that, or ask any other questions. Make people think, make them feel, and the final question is just pretend like it's a Rogue One trailer. What games are you going to make? Yeah, and that's it. Questions? That's a question.
When you notice that you messed up and overlook something in the story, how do you generally handle that?
Usually fixing the story is not as complicated as fixing the production. Because if you have story, you already have like a lot of bricks that you can switch around and turn around. So this is usually really, really easy to fix. Except if the game is finished. Then you just have to hope that nobody finds out about it. Or pretend it's artsy. That's all. Yeah, but just show it to people who you trust, people who give you feedback, and then maybe in the beginning it's complicated to alter your texts too early. Usually you need a distance, in the beginning of 3 months maybe. Nowadays I just need even half a year ago, I needed 5 weeks, now I need 3 days. So I go back and rip this shit out. So it's becoming less painful as you go.
Speaking about art,
There's a question.
You're giving the workshop in November?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you will cover there?
It's going to be a 5-hour workshop. We did something similar last year, but there were also students there, which made it a little complicated because the teacher said go there, and then I said, well, I'm writing about Pokemon, but it's not supposed to be fun. So this time it's especially for you guys, if you are in the games industry or you want to make games yourself, and we will write for 5 hours straight in Inkle Writer, and we will start with nothing and give you some elements that you have to include in your story because we want to simulate the games industry. And then spontaneously we'll give you deadlines, change what you have to write about, and then you will feel really sad, and in the end, let's see, if you made it from beginning to end, with a lot of feedback from us.
Well, tell us how to make a good story.
I think that's something you have to find out for yourself, but how to make a story, make it through, and to give you some of the tools you need for that. Yeah. So to inspire you to sit down and do it yourself. Yeah. And also, if you want, join us for the exclusive preview of the Pillars of the Earth, which will be rated not 16 like our game, but 12 and up. So yeah, there's more interesting stuff coming next year, even if you see this. There's a question.
You start writing. Do you start by summing up the basic idea of your outlines, or do you just start writing in the first chapter and try to write it?
Since I usually now write for the game stuff, I always start with small abstracts, and then it gets bigger and more complicated. So, but it's a long way away from the real writing process. Usually it's abstracts and flowcharts and so on, because you always have to show people in the beginning. You have a pitch phase, a production phase. You have to think how many screens you will need for this. And so this is already writing, but if I were at home, I would do it all wrong again, probably, and I would just start writing and then it's going nowhere. So, but sometimes I'm also starting, to write a pitch for myself, which also feels kind of stupid, but at least you don't invest a lot of time into it, which is really good, to test out ideas.
You mentioned that the last 5 years brought quite a few interesting interactive storytelling titles to us, and you also mentioned that when you're playing games right now, that you are taking them apart and analyzing them. So I was wondering, which of those interactive storytelling titles influence you the most as a storytelling game designer?
Well, yeah. The thing is, if you do a project like this, you cannot be influenced always in ways that you want. This is, Pillars of the Earth had to become what I already wanted to do after Night of the Rabbit. So everything I wanted to do, I included there. So in a way, it's what I wanted. But there's a lot of other interesting concepts, like for example, Gone Home, which is mesmerizing, the Stanley Parable, or the follow-up game, The Beginner's Guide, which is completely different in a way, and then again similar in other ways. But for example, which is something I always tell them about Kentucky Route Zero. So it's the first adventure game for me that also works on a super adventure game level, but has no puzzles, only the pure story, which was perfect for me. It's mesmerizing, unbelievable. You can just do the good stuff. But somebody has to try it. And with Gone Home, for example, you actually learn. That changed my definition of puzzles, because in puzzles, when you hear puzzles, you always think, oh, I've got a bucket with a hole and a rubber ducky and jam, and I put it together now. But a puzzle can also be a very classic. Kentucky Route Gone Home has like 3 puzzles. You need a locker key, you need another key, and what else? And which are structuring elements, so they are still in there. So in that sense, it's an adventure game. Yeah. So something like this.
I really enjoyed your talk, and I thought about Did you ever think about starting a podcast or anything?
It's really, really interesting. Maybe at one point we're going to hear about that. Maurice started in episode 6 of our podcast, which is not published yet because we still have to think about how to do that and which music to use. So, and we're also talking about that. I think your theory for the podcast was adventure games are dead. Yeah. But we all went out happy and we agreed in the end. So it's very provocative for Maurice, but yeah, he has a reason to do that. Maybe you will find out about that in the future. If you follow me on Twitter, which I never use, but I promise to use it when the podcast is done. So yeah, I'm not on Facebook anymore. Facebook, it's so over, yeah. So last century, just saying. Well, that's not true. Okay, last decade. Anyway, shit of the past. Okay, there's no question. No question. I think that's it. Yeah, there's a question.
In your rant, you juxtaposed advertising in games, saying that advertisements aren't as cool as games.
No, advertising I think is good, but making, for example,
it's not self-serving like games, right?
well, it's a way of financing your game. Financing your game is really fair.
Oh, that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
Advertising as an art form.
Mm-hmm.
That is not self-serving like games are, because when you're viewing an ad, it's trying to get you to buy cola in the future.
Well, no, I think.
Whereas when you're playing a game, the immediate emotional response is
Mhm.
the entire purpose.
Well, I think actually maybe the opposite is even quite true, but usually you don't get that. If I play a game, that's sponsored by ads, that's good. But for example, if you want to make people addicted to your game and you wait for a big oil sheik and some people who don't know how to spend their money, to spend money on your game, and this is your financing strategy, then you're doing something like a slot machine, which is not like a Coke ad. And the thing is, for example, in the 1950s, when advertisement was still a little bit different, one of my favorite US comedians, Jack Benny, he did a radio show and then a TV show. Those shows were always presented by one company. So in the beginning you had an ad, and in the middle you had an ad, and in the end. And in the show they had a fun way of putting the products in with a lot of self-irony. So they were trying to sell yellow and Jello and cars and radios for some reason. And so the whole thing was sponsored by one company, which was there all the time. And even, cigarette ads like Chesterfield and Lucky Strike. Lucky's taste better because they're toasted. It's the milder, smoother cigarette. Well, anyway, so the thing is, I love it. It's wonderful. If someone would come up to me and say, I'm sponsoring your adventure game, but you have to make ads, maybe not for cigarettes, but for Coca-Cola or whatever, I'm all in. This is brilliant. But for example, the example was the coolness of the advertising industry itself. Because there's a lot of hip guys running around, and then they write articles afterward, oh, I felt so cool, but I only did a Coke advertisement, and now my life feels empty. So that's the thing. They won't feel the fulfillment.
You also suggest you make games that have a purpose beyond entertainment,
Yes.
like educational or, say, political propaganda, if you will.
Yeah, well, we should at least think about it because it can do that. But doing entertainment, doing a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie is absolutely okay. But if you, for example, think, oh, games are art, they can be political, but I don't want to be political, then that's already a political statement. So there's no not political game. But that's just my politics I'm pushing on you. So. Yeah.
Content is not the right word, but you're distributing your worldview, right? You're distributing your view of the world by the game you're making, so that is in a way political.
And as much as it relates to real world things, so it takes, for example, Papers, Please, right? Which is blatantly inspired by Eastern European Soviet dictatorships, but it doesn't support to actually represent those, because it's not real countries, and the mechanics within the game make sense within the game. So it's not stating this is how it was in some real place.
So to you, the game is not communicating anything at all because it's not about a state?
Pretty much.
Okay, so then our view is different. So it's not reality. So that's okay.
Yeah, well, you can never depict reality as it really is, except in Red Dead Redemption. But but the thing is,
well, it's different if you state that that's what reality is.
well, it doesn't say any country names and so on. It's more about, imagine you are in a situation where you have to go home really quickly and get your paycheck. What passports are you going to stamp? Which ones are you not? And this is decisions people actually have to make.
Right.
I mean, we have to do strange decisions every day, and sometimes, people don't even know about it. And just to get people thinking, of course, it can turn into propaganda. But each anti-war movie, each brilliant movie that was done about history, is always biased. It always takes a position. So that's in a way that's also what political statements are about. So we shouldn't be scared about that. Maybe we should get scared when North Korea does their own games and they start to become good. But I mean, we will cross that bridge when we come to that. Yeah.
So, are you
I have to make a time out of this one. If you guys want to fight, do it outside. So, next question, please. The last one.
Any more
If there's
questions?
anyone else. If not, you're still around, Matthias, so
Yes.
you can ask him after now. So thank you very much.